Welcome, everyone. It is really a pleasure to see you here. Our guests, as you can see, my presentation at slide 1 is information about disinformation between education and prevention. And this is about the tools for verification of data and information. The objective of the presentation has two aims. One, so that you can learn the skills. So this is like a toolbox discussion. So when you think about something that you suspect being a fake, you should know what to use and how to go about checking that. Nothing is, of course, 100% effective, but still there are tools. My second aim is that at completion of this conference, say in this week, you could actually try and test these tools. In other words, find a suspicious piece of news and check it. So let's start. I was worried whether this presentation could work. I divide this into two parts, this presentation. One is technologies and techniques of disinformation, and second, education, media education. In other words, why not hear a bit more about that as well? So let me start first by have a common understanding of what disinformation is, what we're talking about really. So that's not the clue of the presentation, it's methodologies and so forth, but still, when we talk about disinformation, we need to understand that we're talking about activity that is intentional, systematically intentional, interference into the media sphere through fake news and false information. But we also have another things as misinformation, and that's information that is that may become important, that can in fact affect us, because actors of disinformation, persons and entities that form fake news intentionally, is a limited number. But users of social media are massive, which is why it is also important to understand the techniques and media education, because we, as we are not appropriately, let's say, prepared for attacking such information. We may think that something is a true information, and we are liable to share that information. So it's important to that we should have some skills and some tools available to us. Well, it's not society's responsibility exclusively to know how to deal with it, but we need to bear in mind that we are also not resistant to this information. As I said earlier, we firstly have specific actors, international services, politicians, trolls, false accounts intentionally formed in order to make broadly available such information and addressing to us as users.
Narzędzia weryfikacji.
So all kind of disinformation techniques. Let's stop for a moment. What kind of manipulation-based techniques are in place? Because they seem to be numerous, and this is by no means an exhaustive list. We could easily divide them into 5 different subsections. First and foremost, manipulation at the level of sources, so spoofing, concealing identity. And here, I can quote a good example. Perhaps you heard about an account with the name of PAP included in the name, Polish Press Agency. But when it comes to the real name of the user, it was totally different. So at a glance, it seemed quite legitimate, but in practical terms, it was an attempt of spoofing, something that you cannot notice that easily. Data tampering, a very standard method, all kind of false studies and pseudo-scientific magazines, or false authorities or false role models. Secondly, manipulation at the level of facts. false connections or relations, malinformation. I've already mentioned disinformation and misinformation, but here malinformation means providing access to all kind of real information, but something that is highly sensitive in order to smear someone, for instance. Next, something that is commonplace, false context, false pretenses, so presenting information but in a distorted picture or context. Cherry picking, that's another type. So selecting certain facts by hand as if so that they match the right information, but actually choosing at all the different contexts. Manipulating at the level of language, highly emotional language, as well as special expressions that act as a kind of a booster or consolidating term, an enhancer, meaning that we present information in such a way that is aimed at stirring up highly intense emotions, something that aims to consolidate certain things. For instance, have you ever heard about the process of Ukrainization of Poland, or when you talk about the phenomenon of vaccinations? And last but not least, manipulating with beliefs, anecdotal proof, gossip, as well as all kind of conspiracy theories, as you heard during the times of the pandemic. This proverbial uncle that had a son, and the uncle of this son worked in the military, so they heard, it was widely rumored that Warsaw is going to be closed down for 2 weeks. And image tampering, I'm not going to focus on this too much because this should be a topic for a separate presentation. So image tampering, image manipulation, something that we give a wide coverage to. We do have deepfake, but we also deal increasingly with cheap fake, a very simple type of image tampering. As an example, a narrative from the election, it surfaced in October 2023 during the election, and it assumed that the government back then is going to take the army to the street, but they actually uploaded the images from Israel. It was slightly tampered and manipulated. You could see the flag partially, but some images were totally unprocessed. You could see tanks with Israeli flags that were supposed to invade Warsaw. And last but not least, photo montage. So again, well-known methods of changing or manipulating images. But let's move on to some specific tools. Manipulation at the level of facts, false connections. So some kind of illusory dependencies that are not really connected with one another. Here you can see faces with a lot of skin changes. It looks like some kind of an acne or a yeast infection, so something obviously went wrong, but it assumed that it comes as a result of wearing a face mask. If you remember the times of the COVID right now, conferences look so much differently because we no longer have to wear a face mask. What can you do when you are dealing with image tampering? Simple image search using Google. Here you can see it, it is demonstrated. When it comes to the window, you can see the photo icon. And what do? You upload a photograph, and then there are results displayed always. No, it is not always the case, but it's quite simple. Most of us tend to use Google, so I could ask how many, but I assume that most of the participants of the conference. And it appears that, for instance, this given type of content has been fact-checked a long time ago, both in Polish and in English. The next type, photo montage, a very interesting example from the beginnings of the war in Ukraine. Again, seemingly in the city of Gdańsk or Danzig, one of the streets was renamed, and it was named the Street of the Heroes of Azovstal. Again, a lot of attempts to fact-check it. Our team basically contacted Gdańsk, and all of a sudden it appeared that it was far from being true. Actually, the street names look differently, as far as I know, but it is not common knowledge. You can also do it employing the so-called photo forensics. Again, let me underline that NASK cannot be held accountable for the efficiency and effectiveness of all the quoted tools, yet in majority cases they seem to be quite effective. Photo forensics. Again, we upload a file or a link to a given image and we can really find out what happened. And here you can see that the photo that has been shared is the result of photo montage. Cheap fake. You don't need any AI-based tools in order to change it. Just an ordinary standard phone and program will do. And it may seem that the participants of the conference are wearing the national colors of the Ukrainian flag. You can see the photograph presenting politicians. It has been slightly manipulated. Those colors are not credible because they don't look natural. Again, here we can employ photo forensics and the program will show to us that the colors have been changed, manipulated. The next thing, deepfake, something that is very common nowadays. Here probably we are dealing with a growing social awareness because we seem to be talking about it a lot. On the other hand, we are dealing with a growing number of deepfakes. What is deepfake? Highly advanced methods of image processing employing AI-based tools. With the use of this technology, you can obtain highly realistic content that can promote effectively all kinds of disinformation. Maybe you remember the photographs of Donald Trump escaping from the police, or Pope Francis wearing this cool winter white jacket. These are the examples of well-known deepfakes. And it was easy to notice them because they were like too good, too perfect. Deep, right? Something worth paying attention to. Although right now they are becoming increasingly credible. Again, something that you need to pay attention to because deep fake is not just the image. We can talk about voice recordings, video recordings. So when it comes to photographs, the easiest is, recordings seem to be more credible. My thesis is as follows: when it comes to social awareness about the photographs, it seems to be higher, but the studies are still taking place. When it comes to each and every type, we should pay attention to the following: lips movement, lack of blinking, unnatural change of hairstyle, an unorthodox body posture, 6 fingers or 4 fingers instead of 5 fingers in a photograph. It seems to be improving, but seems to be still problematic in all kinds of deepfakes. And another program that can come in handy, of course, it doesn't mean 100% efficiency. It is called AI or Not, this program. If you want to take advantage of this tool, you have to create your account. It is free of charge, and just like in photo forensics, we have to upload a given file and you can find out what is the likelihood that it has been manipulated using AI-based tools. The next thing seems to be very popular. We could see this especially during the pandemic: false studies and pseudo-scientific magazines. So if you provide access to studies without the proper verification, the so-called predatory journals basically imitate all kinds of scientific positions, and as I mentioned, it was used to promote, disseminate information dedicated to coronavirus and the pandemic. Here you can see a bookmark, how not to be taken in if you don't want to be taken for a ride. I know that our break is coming, but you can again take a photograph. We have another tool, beallslist.net. Again, this is by no means an exhaustive list. It's a list of the so-called predatory journals. So basically, it's a list of all kinds of journals and magazines that potentially could act as predators. They disseminate, publish some kind of content without the right content verification. And when it comes to higher education, Somebody else will talk about it in detail, but it continues to be a problem and it is taken advantage of in order to disseminate disinformation. False authority is a typical situation, just like from a commercial or advertisement of a toothpaste. Seemingly, in the photograph, you can see a genuine doctor. He looks very expert-like, very professional, but let's verify using another tool by the name of TinEye. And this is a reverse image search tool. You can verify basic aspects free of charge. So you have to upload the photograph of this very professional looking doctor, but in reality, this is merely a model emulating a doctor, somebody who basically makes his living in this way. The next thing, those consolidating terms or enhancers, as I mentioned before, please know that using specific phrases, hashtags, expressions that are to be etched in the memory of public opinion, sometimes they are harmful. They are associated especially with all kinds of sensitive groups, so people who are not heteronormative refugees, women, female refugees, in this case Ukrainians and Ukraine as such. So stop to the Ukrainization of Poland. This is a flagship example. Maybe you heard about it before. Next, concealing your identity, pretending to be another institution. We have the State Electoral Committee, but all of a sudden, under this ape, you can see that the name is totally different. And this is by no means an account of the State Electoral Committee pretending to be a public person. Here, seemingly, it's supposed to be Janusz Piechociński, but actually, it's the account by the name of Rokita Diabeł, so Rokita Devil. I still do have some time. I'm rushing because I understand the essence of having a coffee break. How not to fall victim to disinformation? All the tools are really critical. I'm happy that you keep taking photographs in mass. Hopefully, you will be able to take advantage of one of those tools, given a kind of strenuous situation, when all of a sudden it comes to you that maybe what you see is an example of misinformation. It's impossible to take advantage of all the tools. Checkers are paid for. It means like a full-time job. So please just bear in mind that what we read sometimes is not true. And even if it comes from credible individuals, but seems to be highly emotional, just please be aware of the fact that there is this threat looming on the horizon. Sounds like a cliche, how not to give in. You have to read the whole content. It's not only about the headline. The headline usually does not reflect the essence of the entire content. Obviously, we don't always have a lot of time to read it all, but if it is pivotal, if it's an important piece of news, if it touches upon some important changes, let's read it all. Next, you have to verify the author and the authorship. If it's a genuine person or a fictitious character, just like the doctor from the previous slide, maybe it's like a random person. If it's a credible author, somebody that published something before. Next, sometimes you have content that turns out to be fake news, but basically just an old type of context, but the situation has changed. Sometimes the authors of disinformation harness it. They search for an article published 5 years ago and they quote it as an evidence of something that happened on the previous day. You have to check the credibility of a given text, website, and you have to assess it objectively based on what I have mentioned. For instance, there are no boosting and consolidating terms in the context, how social groups are presented in a given text. What is the role of media education? It has already been discussed extensively, so just several examples. How come that those tools are critical? How come that we should be aware of them? The report by NASK, Teenagers 3.0, indicated that the time that teenagers spend on the internet on weekdays amounts to 5 hours and 36 minutes every day, assuming that they sleep for 6-7 hours a day, and they also spend a lot of time at school. The internet means that there are a lot of threats in it, and it is also full of misinformation. So you have to basically be aware of the fact that when it comes to this period of 5 hours, you can fall into this trap. 44% of them believe that when it comes to the internet, you cannot tell the difference between what is real and what is false. So we seem to be defenseless, faced with some kind of disinformation and a lack of trust and respect of the internet. On one hand, it is positive, the lack of trust, because you are aware of your own bias and you realize the importance of verifying things. On the other hand, we cease to trust anything. 50% of teenagers are interested in the credibility of portals, of the authors that they follow on social news. Great statistics, great data. This indicates that we have something to work with. 50% of teenagers are interested in it. But what is their source of information or knowledge? How effective can it be? Again, it raises a lot of doubts, but again, a lot of room for improvement, a lot of things that we can do. And last but not least, it's all about critical thinking when it comes to the authors of both disinformation and misinformation. They also mention the importance of critical thinking, but after all, it supports the way we can combat disinformation. You have to ask the right questions, you have to analyze data and verify information. These are all critical skills for all groups, seniors, children, teenagers, and we will learn all the competences in different manners depending on what kind of social group we are dealing with. Some of them will be jeopardized with disinformation more. I'm talking about underprivileged things, sensitive groups, so methods employed will be different, but generally these are three key issues.
Przechodząc do końca, bo
Moving on to my conclusions, because we are in the coffee break time, I'd like to express my appreciation, encourage you to profiles for verification, both Facebook and Twitter or X. They also provide information about new narratives and so on. So switch your verification and remember that responsibility for fighting false news rests not just on others, but on you as well. Thank you very much.